Okay, everyone, in the second part of this video, we're going to focus on the instructional task or the procedures of your lesson plan or what it is that you're actually going to do. So to help you organize this part of the lesson plan, you're going to use a model of teaching called the gradual release of responsibility. So this is going to sound a lot like scaffolding and the zone of proximal development, if you remember talking about that in class. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to shift the cognitive load or most of the thinking and work from you, the teacher, to the student so that they can do it on their own. So I want to show you, you can follow this link to go to a diagram that shows you how the gradual release of responsibility instructional framework should work or look like. So if you look here, you start off with a focus lesson, and the I do is the teacher does. So the teacher is modeling and showing most of the work. This is the part where you might call it direct instruction. And then you move into guided instruction, or you do it together or some part together. And then you move even less, and the students do it collaboratively so they can do it with a peer. And then you move to where the student has the most responsibility and they do something by themselves. So you can blur these and you can also move them around a bit. So let's say if you wanted to start out with a bit of independent work and then you see what they know and then you wanted to model it, you can do that. In the lesson that I'm going to model for you, I follow this just completely. I start with the I do and I move to the independent at the end of my lesson. Okay, so the focus lesson is the I do part, or where the teacher does the direct instruction. We do is guided instruction, where the teacher and students do something together. You do it together is the collaborative partners, where students do something together or with a peer. And the teacher walks around only to assist. And then the you do it alone is the independent practice, where the student attempts to do something alone. Under each of the headings, you need to write at least 4 steps. They should be specific and in a complete sentence, and each step must be connected to your objective. So really the most important thing to do, or make sure that you have done when you reach this point, is to make sure you've really written a really good, strong objective. Okay, so let's look. This is the first section, the focus lesson, and remember that this is the I do part. I have written 7 steps in this section. You need to at least have 4. So let's take a look at 1. I will read aloud half of chapter 1 of How to Steal a Dog. Step 2, the students will finish reading the chapter by partner reading. Remember that I'm assuming that this book is on the independent reading level of most everyone in the class. If it's just close to that, remember that partner reading helps students that might struggle with words by having a partner there to help them out when they come across a word that they don't know. After they read, I will write the words perspective and character on the board, and then I will ask the students to turn and talk with a peer about these words. Let's take a look at my questions. Remember that to ask open-ended questions that prompt children to talk. What do these words mean? Where have you heard them before? How would you use them in a sentence? And then ask for some responses from students. While I'm listening to them, I will write responses on the board and then I'll clarify any misconceptions. Very important that before you move on that you know that students mostly understand what perspective and character means. Then now I'm going to do the modeling of locating a quote from a main character that demonstrates their perspective of an event by using an example from How to Steal a Dog. I will project that quote on the interactive whiteboard and read it aloud to students. So this comes from page 1, chapter 1 of How to Steal a Dog. The date I decided to steal a dog was the same day my best friend, Luann Godfrey, found out I lived in a car. I had told Mama she would find out sooner or later, seeing as how she's so nosy and all. But Mama had rolled her eyes and said, "Just get on up there to the bus stop, Georgina, and quit your whining." So that's what I did. I stood up there at the bus stop pretending like I still lived in apartment 3B. I pretended like I didn't have mustard on my shirt from the day before. I pretended like I hadn't washed my hair in the bathroom of the Texaco gas station that very morning. And I pretended like my daddy hadn't just waltzed off and left us with nothing but 3 rolls of quarters and a mayonnaise jar full of wadded up dollar bills. Next, y'all do a think aloud with the quote, saying aloud to the students. So a think aloud is when I voice or the teacher voices their thoughts aloud to the students so they can understand the thought process that you're going through and that you expect them to go through. So again, I know the main character Georgina is writing this because it uses I. Georgina shows her perspective on living in a car by saying that she is pretending like she didn't have mustard on her shirt, that she hadn't washed her hair in the bathroom of a gas station, and that her daddy hadn't abandoned them, leaving them only with a little bit of money. These descriptions make me think that Georgina is embarrassed about living in a car, that it is difficult, and she is worried and a little scared. Okay, so now I'm going to try to scaffold into the next sections the student's ability to do what I have just done. So I'm going to distribute a 2-column chart. So if you scroll down, I've attached this 2-column chart here down at the bottom. And it will have the same quote and my analysis written on it as an example. I will read aloud the columns of the chart, showing where to place the quote and the analysis. And I will read aloud the prompting questions and ask the students how my analysis answered all the questions. I will group the students heterogeneously for the collaborative work. This means that they're not grouped by any ability that I've found from reading levels. Instead, they're mixed up at random or intentionally with children who may be stronger readers than those who aren't yet. Moving on to the collaborative work, in groups of 3 or 4, the students will locate one more quote from the first chapter of How to Steal a Dog that shows the main character's, Georgina's, perspective of her life events. Each student will write that quote on the individual chart, so it'll go here under item 2. As a group, the students will analyze the quote in the second column of the chart, and then each group will have someone who volunteers to share their collective work with the entire class. Now, moving on into independent work, you can see probably where this is going. At the end of this lesson, the students are attempting to do everything that we have just done alone. So in this third row, they will attempt to identify the last quote on their own. They will repeat the same procedures by writing the quote in column 1 and analyzing it in column 2. Each student will share their last quote analysis with one other peer, and peers will provide feedback with prompts like, "Oh, I can see how," or "I also think that it means." At the end of this lesson, I will collect each chart as a form of assessment of the objective. So I think I had mentioned to you before that when you're thinking about writing lesson plans, you're really coming full circle. That you said that students need to meet this standard. They will meet this standard by doing this objective. And when I come around all the way to the end of that lesson, I should be able to collect something that says that they have met the objective.